First of all, I don't have any way of verifying these documents, but if 10% of what is written in them is correct, and probably it is more than that, that's enough to show that regardless of how much flexibility Palestinian negotiators showed or show, regardless of how many concessions Palestinians make, including historic huge compromises, still Israel would not make a peace deal. It's a clear indication that Israel never did and never wants to allow a Palestinian independent state as a solution to the problem. It is a very clear indication that Israel is using every possible way to destroy the very last potential for two-state solution. Because they don't want us to have a normal state, although we agree on having a very little tiny state in 22% of the land, which is less than half of what the United Nations determined that we should have, 45%. Even when we agree on having 22%, and if what is leaking is correct, that the guys there also gave away parts of that, even all of this is not enough for Israel. That is a very clear and very graphic proof of the fact that Israel does not believe in the right of the Palestinians to have freedom or have independence or have their own state. The only thing that makes them go to negotiations sometimes is because there is a demographic problem. And they want to solve the demographic problem, which is our presence on our land, by putting us in jails and prison-like entities or clusters of pantostans, as used to be in the case of South African apartheid system. That's their goal. They want us to be slaves under occupation and under military Israeli establishment, and with the hope that eventually people will be so upset about their social and economic and political conditions and then leave the country. There is no other explanation. They are actively involved in places like Jerusalem in a process of ethnic cleansing. When a family lives in Jerusalem and you tell them, although they've been living there since hundreds of years as family, you tell them you live in this house but you have to pay high taxes for living there in your own house, and you prevent them from having normal economic activity, so they cannot make income, but you tax them a lot. And then when they want to build a new house or expand their house and add a room, you don't give them permits. And then when they build, because they are obliged to, you come and demolish their homes. This is nothing but a process of smartly designed, gradual ethnic cleansing. Because you have, the Israelis can build as much as they want, but Palestinians cannot build even on their own land. That is what apartheid is. It's about two different systems of laws for two different people living in the same place. So in my opinion, these documents have only proven one point, which is that regardless of how many concessions Palestinians make, Israel is not ready and will not be ready unless there is sufficient and strong pressure on Israel, and unless there is a serious and real change in the balance of power. Without that, the whole peace process is nothing but a camouflage, is nothing but a cover for Israeli expansion of settlements, Israeli annexation of the land, which is happening around the clock. And the proof is that what peace process in the world, in which part of the world the peace process took 20 years and did not deliver anything except deterioration. And Israel would not have been able to do this, unfortunately, if there weren't many strong international forces who are complicit with Israeli policy. Well, the fact that the United States is unable to force Israel to do what the United States itself and the Quartet demanded, which is freezing of settlements. Every country in the world, including the United States, the whole world, the UN, and the International Court of Justice in The Hague made a resolution that settlement activities in the occupied territories are illegal and should be stopped. Then the Americans do not have the political will or ability to pressure Israel to stop settlement expansion, and they want to monopolize the role of the peace mediator. It makes no sense. Mr. Obama promised himself in a speech in Cairo more than a year and a half ago that he will stop settlement activities. Now, in his last speech in the Congress, he didn't have 30 seconds to mention the issue of Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The European side is, in my opinion, more aware of the Palestinian issue, more, in terms of position, more, sympathetic. Definitely without the economic aid of Europe, Palestinians would have had many problems, but from the other side, it's clear that Israel is using this economic aid as if the Europeans are paying the cost of occupation. The problem in Europe is that there is no political clout to act independently from the United States. Mm-hmm. And even when some European countries have an advanced position, some other European countries like Holland, for instance, pull them back. That's why Europe practically only spends the money. But politically, it is deprived from what I think its right, being geographically so close to the area, and being the first that would be affected by explosions in the Middle East. I think they have the right to have a more active role, but unfortunately, this is not happening because each time this is raised, they defer to the Americans. The other problem is, of course, the fact that something that I think Europeans should care more about, which is the issue of democracy here, and the issue of human rights, and the issue of freedom of expression. And that relates not only to Israeli violations of human rights, it also relates to the behavior of the two authorities, basically, which exist now de facto in West Bank and Gaza, where I believe there should be a stronger stand to demand that Palestine should be a democracy. We don't want just a state, we want a good state. We want a place where women and men are equal in rights. We want a state where people with disability have the full rights to be respected. We want a state where the rule of law is governing everything. We want a place where people have equal opportunity and where nepotism and clientelism does not exist because you cannot, and reflect itself in a way that you cannot have this job unless you belong to this party or this party. And we want a state where people express themselves freely, elect their leaders, elect their municipality leaders, elect their members of parliament. And we want members of parliament like myself, when elected, to be respected and have a say in the laws that are passed. Now we are all marginalized. 55 members of our elected parliament were arrested by Israel. More than 15 are still in Israeli jails. 3 of them are Jerusalemites. And Israel took away their right, their citizenship, although they were elected to represent Jerusalem. And 3 of them refused to leave, so they are stuck now because they refused to leave in the Red Cross office for more than 4 months now. And I don't see serious actions to tell Israel this is not allowed. There is a huge amount of media work that needs to be done, unfortunately. But as I say, the biggest problem we have is that the Israeli narrative is dominant. And in some countries, the journalists practice what I call self-censorship. They avoid anything that does not fit with the overall narrative that is practically governing or dominant, let's say. And I do appreciate the courage of those who insist to show the truth. And I think a German citizen is entitled to knowing the truth. That's why press exists.
Yeah.
Press does not exist to be a propaganda for a certain party against another. In my opinion, free press means free access, and also each journalist has a moral responsibility and professional responsibility of making the truth available to its readers or its listeners. I think there is a lot still that needs to be done in this direction.
Yeah.
That's why we, for instance, developed recently a DVD documentary in few languages to give the chance to the people to know at least our point of view, to see the Palestinian narrative of what's happening. I'm not denying anybody's right to listen to the Israeli narrative, but I'm saying it is our right that you also listen to the Palestinian narrative. I believe the whole process of negotiations has failed. And there is no hope there. It's so clear. There will be no useful negotiations unless the balance of powers change. There has to be a certain good balance to allow a possible agreement. And that's why I think we should adopt a strategy that combines non-violent active resistance, non-violent peaceful resistance against occupation, against oppression, against deprivation of our freedoms, combined with a powerful, strong international solidarity campaign. I think this combination is so important, and we should devote a lot of our energy in this direction. I also believe that the only peace that will happen here and last is the peace between two democracies. So that's why I believe and will work, like many of my colleagues, on not only struggling to be free from occupation, but also struggling to have real democracy in Palestine. I think these are very important issues. And the region itself is dying for democracy. You have seen what happened in Tunisia. You see what's going on now in other countries in the region. And nothing is surprising. We've written about this in the Human Development Report, which was issued with the help of UNDP. We issued, I think, 5 reports. I was part of 2 of them. And the main things we said in these reports, and that was done more than 5-6 years ago. The main problem in the Arab world is that the youth does not have opportunity. The main problem is corruption. The main problem is lack of democracy and lack of representation and lack of freedom of expression. And 25% of people with high degrees from universities leave the Arab world to work in other countries. What is lacking is dignity, because people feel oppressed and they feel they are undignified. And that's why I would call the uprising that is happening now in the Arab world the uprising of dignity, or the uprising for dignity. For some people it's the bread, for other people it's the living expenses, but for most people it's their injured dignity, and they want their dignity back.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Barghouti. It's been a great pleasure talking to you.